You ever have one of those episodes of an animated series, like even if it's not like your favorite series of all time or anything, where you relate to it? Like in the strangest of ways, you find yourself relating to it. You find yourself being able to sympathize and understand the character, and specifically what that character is going through at that particular moment. Like Miraculous is not one of my top 5, my top 10 favorite shows ever. No, it's not. It's probably like number 15, maybe 13. But that's because I've watched so much animation over the years. But I can say this episode is that moment for me. It is one of those episodes where I found myself invested, I found myself relating to, and found my heart breaking for this character. Because up to this point, Rose was just a cute, fun little side character. Like, she's nice, she's happy, she's positive, and she's Julika's girlfriend. That's pretty much all I knew about her up to this point. And yeah, she's had her moments, and pretty sure even, especially when Julika gets akumatized into Reflecta, but at the same time, I was not expecting her character to take this kind of turn. A turn that made me legitimately emotional, because I had no clue that this character was even going through this. And I wish I could go into detail about what it is, but you need to just see it for yourself. But I'll just say right now, if you're someone with this condition, or you're someone that deals with this kind of situation, you will relate and understand to this character a lot. Even if you aren't in that particular situation, and you just have a similar situation, like, for example, I have this, but even with that, this episode leaves me feeling empowered, inspired, uplifted, because it's an episode about perseverance. It's an episode about understanding. It's an episode just about surprisingly serious subject matter. And I was not expecting Miraculous, of all things, to actually do this correctly, but it does. It does something that a lot of cartoons fail at, especially nowadays. Sure, you have stuff like Bluey that's able to do this stuff in its sleep, but most modern cartoons nowadays do not have the balls to go this dark or this serious into a subject matter. Most of the time, unless it's an adult show, just playing it safe. Just coasting that line. Well, this episode of Miraculous shows that that's not the case. And honestly, this show has a wide appeal. I can clearly see that. But this particular episode, it's just one of those that leaves you thinking. I wish I could go into more in-depth about it, but I try to not go too deep into spoilers. That way, you get to have some surprise when you actually see it for yourself. But this one, I'm going to have to talk a little bit more in depth, because it's one that has impacted me in a way. So, this review is going to be longer than usual by probably a good bit, and we're going to dive deep into its themes. So, prepare yourself for a longer review, and I promise you that the next one will not be this long. And we probably won't be at this length again until the season finale. So, let's dive into this episode and why it might just be my new favorite episode in all of Miraculous. No, I'm not kidding you. What's up? What's happening? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Animation Station, your number one suggestion for anything and everything animation, including superheroes fighting crime on the other side of the world, as well as TV and movies. I'm your host, Jackson Small. Welcome to my review of Miraculous Season 4, Episode 11, Guiltrip. This is an episode where we find out that Rose, a beloved, very, very positive and happy side character, actually has a serious illness. One that leaves her in the hospital multiple times, according to Julika. That hit me just as hard as it hit everyone else. Because in this episode, we have the entire class trying to support these two. But the problem is, it feels more out of pity, unintentionally, than it does out of genuine kindness. And that's not to say these characters aren't kind. Like, these characters think that they're doing this to make these characters feel more comfortable, to actually support them. But they overdo it a fair bit, and they end up driving Julica out, and ends up upsetting Rose. But it doesn't feel malicious. That's the beauty of this episode's writing in particular, because yes, the characters make a mistake and do cause the akumatization and the plot, but it doesn't feel at all malicious. It feels perfectly in character for all of them to be supportive of their classmate, but not realizing that they were being too supportive. Like, Julica's perfect day is one that just treats her and Rose like normal. No special treatment, no early gifts, none of that. So when they start doing that, thinking that they're doing a kindness, it's actually worrying and frightening Julica. And knowing her character, on top of Rose's character, and on top of learning what we learn about Rose's character in this episode, it's entirely understandable. Because Julica has always been the sheltered, quiet character. Very rarely does she ever have one of those moments where she talks, or she has a conversation with other characters. So, it's like, it's hard to really explain, but point is, if you know Julica's character, this is entirely in line with her character. Then, moving on from that, is when she gets akumatized. First of all, we're seeing Reflecta again. And unlike the other Legacy villains, I do think this is one that is a little overused. Because we had her in the Lady Noir episode, we have her in her own episode, we had her in a bunch of team-up and finale episodes. Like, Reflecta is one of the most overused villains in the entirety of Miraculous. Heck, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure Reflecta is one of the first characters to be given a Sensi monster. So, yeah, that part does feel a little bit jammed in, but since they are making this season all about bringing these legacy villains back, they bring 2 back in the next episode, so this is nothing new. It's not that surprising, and it's not that big of a problem. It's just something that's worth noting. So, Reflecta, instead of turning people into her through her ring, like she usually does, instead, Reflecta turns people into what they are with these bubbles inside of this Senti monster that fills them with negative thoughts and that turns them into Reflecta. That is clever, because before this, Marinette and the others had promised to stop giving special treatment to Rose. But they end up breaking their promise, and that's what spurs on the theme of this episode. It's all about truth. And unlike the episode Truth from the beginning of the season, it doesn't feel rushed. Like, I'm just going to say right now, there's no fight in this episode. This episode is all about the characters and the writing. Like, sure, there's technically a conflict at the end, especially when there's a third Miraculous hero introduced, which we will get to. But still, regardless, that is something to be of note. And it's genuinely clever. Because, yeah, I do complain a lot in this season in particular about the fights being rushed. So this one having no fight at all means that it doesn't have to rush. It doesn't have to, like, crowbar in a fight scene just for the sake of the template. Like, it can literally just do its own thing. That's what makes this episode so amazing, because instead of trying to pull the audience's attention away from all of this with a fight, instead, even when Ladybug and Cat Noir show up, they still focus on the emotional part. Like we don't really get a conflict until like the end of the episode. It's all about emotion, and considering the character, it perfectly fits. Not to mention, yeah, let's just talk about it because there's no more going around it. Rose gets to be a miraculous hero. Yeah, Rose gets to be a miraculous hero, and her power is positivity, which, considering her character and what she has to persevere through, it's poetic. And it perfectly fits her character. Her design's fantastic. And the way that she uses positivity to save the day instead of action and battle, again, that's another way of this show in this particular episode changing the template. Like, we don't have a normal, regular, everyday episode of Miraculous here. We have one that focuses on the emotional core, some deep, serious subject matter, and it handles it with grace, and doesn't treat anyone like they're being talked down to. So, at the end of the episode, we have, well, everyone now upholding the promise, and not to mention Ladybug saying the line that she didn't need a Miraculous to be a hero. I can see that line being very inspirational and touching a lot of hearts. Me personally, anyway. So, the episode ends with Juleka getting her wish and Rose being treated normal like everyone else, regardless of her illness. Which, it's just amazing. It's amazing, dude. It goes beyond words, honestly. Because they handle this subject matter with such fluid grace and gentle... what's the word? Gentle sincerity. That's the word, sincerity. That it goes beyond just being an animated episode. Like, I can see this being an inspiration to many people that go through this kind of subject matter. Like, anyone going through this kind of situation or with this particular illness, like, it's an episode that connects deeper than most. And for that, it might just be my new favorite episode of Miraculous, because instead of just being an action show like it usually is, it instead focuses on the characters, the writing, and treating the subject matter with grace and sincerity. If you can get me emotional, you have my respect. And this episode did that. This is one of those episodes where, yeah, I almost cried. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I almost cried in this episode, and I am not ashamed of it, because that is how good this one is, guys. Like, I can't put into any more words than I already have. So, with all that said, and apologies for my rambling, I've just been trying to mainly talk about most of this off the cuff. Let's get into my final thoughts now, which are a little bit more organized. I hope you enjoy. One of the most inspirational and emotional episodes of the series, especially finding out about Rose's illness, which was genuinely shocking after all these previous seasons where she just seemed like a perfectly fine character. It's also one of the best written episodes of the season, with no one coming off as malicious in their actions, but just misguided out of worry for their friend, which is what leads to the plot that transpires. It's also a very different episode of Miraculous, with no actual battle per se, and treating its darker subject matter with genuine graceful sincerity, which is so rare nowadays in modern animation. I cannot stress that enough. Then having Rose don her own Miraculous and save the day with her methods of positivity rather than a battle is so well done and so uniquely different for this show. And then having Reflecta, another legacy villain, coming back was just a cherry on top, if a bit overused. It is a truly incredible piece of animation that will lift anyone's spirits, and no doubt one of the strongest episodes of Season 4. Even if you aren't into Miraculous, this is still a must-watch to see how to handle darker topics in animation correctly. That's the best praise that I can give this episode. It handles darker topics in animation correctly. That's a lot harder to do than you might think. So, yeah, I think I've pretty much said everything I can. It's an incredible, phenomenal, outstanding, amazing episode. Best of the season, and probably my new favorite of the entire show. It's a truly miraculous episode. Sorry, pardon the pun, but I literally have no other way to put it. Like, animation, take notes from this episode, okay? Do more stuff like this. Take notes and actually do not be afraid to stop playing it safe. And with that, final verdict for this episode's an easy, high, and well-deserved 11 out of 10. I cannot say anything more. You need to see it for yourself. And anyone that's going through this situation or this illness or something similar to that, hats off to you. You're the real heroes. And that's it. That's literally all I have to say about this episode. And all I can really say about this episode. Because regardless of what I say, no words coming out of my speaking hole is going to do this episode justice. You just need to see it for yourself. So, with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching. Please check this episode out. I highly recommend it. Like, share, and subscribe for more videos like this almost every single day. And I'll see you guys next time when we cover a much less serious episode with... what was it called again? Crocodile, that's what it was. See you next time for Crocodile.